So in this video, I'm going to talk about rationalizing a denominator with one square root, and this is actually part of a three-part series. So when you're talking about rationalizing denominators, you kind of have like the case of one square root. What do you do when you have higher radicals? And then what do you do when you have three square roots? So I have a video for each one of these. And I really feel like they're three separate topics. So if this isn't what you were looking for, you can check out the other videos in this series. So first of all, just what do I mean by rationalize the denominator? Okay, so you're not allowed to have radicals in the denominator of fractions. And so this is the process of using multiplication to get rid of the radical in the denominator of a fraction. And it's actually super simple when you have a square root. So when you have a square root, all you have to do is multiply by that square root on the top and on the bottom. So whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So think about what this actually does then. This gives you 2 times the square root of 3 on top. This gives you the square root of 9. And then the square root of 9 is just equal to 3, right? So, boom. Now we've got the radical gone. And yeah, it's really that easy. So here's the thing. Not every radical can be rationalized so easily. So multiplying by this square root only works when you have one square root, okay? If you have more than one square root, you have to use something different. This is simple because it's one singular square root. And also, just because you have a square root doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stay a simple problem. So let's look at this one. So I've got 20 over the square root of 8. Okay, so I'm going to start by multiplying the top and bottom by the square root of 8. So I have 20 times the square root of 8 over the square root of 64. Okay, there's actually a lot going on here. So first of all, 20 and 8 can be simplified, right? So I can divide the top and bottom of those by 5. But wait, there's more. Sorry, did I say 5? I meant divide by 4. But wait, there's more. I can also simplify the square root of 8. So this problem actually has a lot going on in it, and there's more than one way that you could have dealt with this. So you could have actually simplified the square root of 8 first. So we'll do that next, just so you can kind of compare the techniques. So, okay, so if I simplify the square root of 8, that's going to be 2 times the square root of 2. Okay, and so now look what happens. Now these 2's drop out, and I'm just left with 5 times the square root of 2. So, I don't know, was this the easier way to do this? I don't know, let's compare. So let's start over. And just for reference, so let's start by simplifying the square root of 8. So if I went that route, this would become 2 times the square root of 2, and then right away I could rewrite this as 10 over the square root of 2. Now from here, I can rationalize so that this gives me 10 times the square root of 2. So the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 will just cancel out the square root ultimately. And then this becomes 5 times the square root of 2. So which was easier? I don't know. I think it's personal preference. I personally probably want to simplify first. But some people just they just want to multiply by that square root and then see what happens. So it's totally up to you. You could try it more than one way, of course. Okay, so let's have you try one here. So why don't you go ahead and rationalize this one? There's more than one way that you can approach this. So I want you to actually think ahead before you do this. What might be the easiest way to do this? And then go from there. Okay, so if we're trying to approach this from what's the easiest way to do this, first of all, you can actually divide, right? So you can simplify some things. So you can divide by 10, and you can divide actually by 2. So you could have divided the top and bottom by 20. So this becomes 2 over 3 at the end of the day. And this will break into the square root of 2 over the square root of 3. So I definitely think that simplifying first is going to make this a world easier. And now I can rationalize. So this becomes the square root of 3 multiplied by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. So ultimately I get the square root of 6 over 3. And I can't simplify any farther, right? This isn't a radical, this is not. So you might have that temptation to be like, oh, 6 and 3 cancel out. They do not, because one's under a radical, one is not. Okay, So continuing on with this idea, so you know what, I'm just going to leave this to you. And you hit play when you're ready. Math is not a spectator sport. This is the best way to make sure you've got this. All right, so once again, I personally just like to simplify first. So if I simplify the top and bottom, this becomes 9x to the third times the square root of x, because square root of 81 is 9. X to the 6, the square root of x to the 6 is x to the third, and then I'm left with this remainder of the square root of x. And then in the denominator here, so I've still got this square root of 2y. So now I'm going to rationalize. And so this becomes 9x cubed times the square root of 2xy over 2y. And you might say, oh, I went some other direction, but I got the same final answer. So that's totally fine. If you looked at this and you thought of a different way to do it, but you still got this answer, tomato, tomato, there's more than one way to do this. That's why I talked about it in the first example. So you're all good as long as you got the same final answer. Okay, so we've got one more here for funsies. So go ahead and try this one. Hit play when you're ready. Okay, so once again, I prefer actually simplifying the bottom first. So this will become, so let's see, x to the fourth times the square root of x. So then what do I actually multiply by? I just have to multiply by the one radical. So I just have to multiply it by the square root of x. So then this becomes the square root of 22x over, so this is a little tricky. So we've got the x to the fourth, and then this square root of x and this square root of x will end up just becoming one more x. So then this becomes square root of 22x over x to the fifth. Okay, so that's it for this video. So if you find that helpful, consider hitting the like button or the subscribe button. I'd super appreciate it. And I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks for watching.